So I wanted to get this from Geekdom 101. I've been going over this, different things that has been happening over with Dragon Ball for, I'd say, a couple of years or something. Um, I've known about stuff that's been happening to Yoko, and Toy, Bird Studios, Shueisha, um, and I knew that there was going to be a problem. I'd say at least a couple of years ago, maybe it's 3 years ago. I knew that there was problems there, um, and that's because as soon as Akio Yoko um, made Capsule Corporation like a couple of years ago or something like that, or longer, or 3 years ago, I don't remember. I was always thinking like, well, what about what about Toy, Toy, you know, Birds Shueisha, Studios. What about them? Because they're the ones that have been doing the manga and the animation. So I knew with Akio Yoku, I knew that there'd be a problem because unless Toy Shueisha had given Akio Yoku permission, unless they give him all these rights and everything, then I knew, this is, how many years ago? I don't know exactly, but it seems like 3 years ago or something. But Akio Yoko made Capsule Corporation, and he's gonna make a Dragon Ball theme park. I don't know if that's still in the works or not. Maybe, maybe not. And so I knew that there's a power struggle going to happen right off the bat. Um, so, anyways, I wanted to get into this because they had some mistranslations about Toyotaro. Um, Shout out to Geekdom. I'm a subscriber of his because he puts out real info. He's an OG of Dragon Ball and stuff. So um, I had always thought about 20 years ago why I do stuff, Dragon Ball stuff. I used to sell Dragon Ball stuff before stupid Funimation did with their stupid dub stuff. Um, but shout out to Geekdom 101 here. Um, sure to give him the praise and stuff like that and everything because he's an OG in this. Um, let's get into this.
If you're stopping by, and if you're new to Geekdom 101, remember to subscribe and enable all notifications so that way you don't miss a single video. We discuss all things Dragon Ball here, movies, anime, manga, and even some video games. We've been here for 10 years and many more to come. I thank you for your continued support. Let's get to the video. Man, it's been a while since we've done a Dragon Ball news related video. I hope you guys are doing really well today. This is going to be both a news related video and a rumor debunked video of something that's been going on now for about a couple weeks, and it does involve Toyotaro and what's next for his career. So make sure that you watch the video all the way to the end so that you have complete context for what's going on, because as usual, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I don't want you to stay misinformed on any of this. So I hope you guys are doing okay. I've been doing just the Tuesday streams with Jordan here on the channel. I've got other things going on with other projects outside of Dragon Ball I've been focusing on. So it's good to be back, even if it's just, for this one video, at least for now, but there will be a follow-up based on the news. So let's get into it. The story is that a couple weeks ago it came out that Toyotaro would be unveiling a new project he was working on, and the project was, a lot of people assumed, not Super, something not Dragon Ball related, like his own manga with his own characters. Now, there was another translation that came out, because remember, this is all being translated and transcribed from Japan, and that can lead to confusion.
Yes.
And that translation said that it was not anything involving a new project, that it's probably going to be Dragon Ball related, and the main crux of the story is that it's not just going to be Toyotaro, it's also going to be Toyotaro being joined by Toriyama's editor, Torishima. This is, of course, Toriyama's original editor. He's the one that was with him and that pretty much discovered him. They were very close up until even Toriyama's passing. That man was a big, big part of Toriyama's life.
Yeah,
Now,
the thing is, well, we'll never know how Toriyama, which direction Toriyama-sama would have gone. Would have gone with the Yoku, or Toyotaro, toy animation, stuff like that. Because right now they're after each other for rights of who can do what. It sounds like, of course, Akira Yoko does, has the animation. Anyways, let's get into this.
now we have clarity about what is going to happen. Because I was getting asked by a bunch of people, what do you think about this Toyotaro thing?
Right.
Is he really doing a new manga with Torishima? And I just kept telling everyone, let's wait till July 7th. Because he's doing a panel, or July 6th, July 6th. So July 6th, he has a panel at Japan Expo. Now, Torishima is going to be there. We finally have clarity now thanks to Red Ribbon DBZ. Japan Expo has given us clarity about what this is, and DBS Hype, of course, put the information out. So I'm going to read this and then tell you what I think to give you a complete understanding of what's going on. It says here, news: after clarification with Japan Expo, it turns out that Toyotaro is not working on any new manga. The site phrased the panel description badly, because remember, there was that whole translation thing.
Yep.
Toyotaro is set to talk about Dragon Ball Super manga with Torishima on July 6th. So, I don't know if y'all remember, but July 6th is a very important day, because July 5th, 2015, 10 years ago, was the debut of the Dragon Ball Super anime. July 5th, 2015. Yes, 10 years have actually passed since the very first episode of Super. So it's pretty much on the anniversary week, and it's going to involve Toyotaro and Torishima. Now, there's a couple of prevailing speculations going on in the community. I have not spoken to anybody internally about what this could be. So this is not any kind of scoop or anything. I'm just telling you what people are talking about. And people seem to believe that moving forward without, with Toriyama no longer being with us, that Torishima will be the guy to help Toyotaro with future Dragon Ball Super chapters.
Yeah.
Because just like how he helped Toriyama with the original Dragon Ball manga for all those years in the 80s, he also helped out with Dr. Slump. Of course, Dr. Mashirito from Dr. Slump is based on Torishima. It was Toriyama's way of putting him into the story. People seem to think that that's going to be Toyotaro's new assistant, or at least editor, for the future of Dragon Ball Super. And that makes sense. That actually does make sense. Torishima has not really done that type of work in a while, and because the Dragon Ball Super manga is monthly, it might be easier for him to read one chapter a month and 4 chapters a month, even though the one chapter is bigger. So I think that makes sense. The other speculation is that this could just be Torishima and Toyotaro talking about Toriyama, talking about what Dragon Ball Super has meant to Toyotaro's life, and sort of doing a tribute to the past. That could also be what's going to be discussed. The reality is, and I always say this, and I want y'all to please listen to me when I tell you this. I would keep your expectations low for this one, only because we don't know. We do not know exactly what they're going to talk about. V-Jump magazine and Shueisha have not announced anything. The only thing they keep saying, and they've said it multiple times in the previous few months of the V-Jump magazine, has been that Dragon Ball Super's on a hiatus. They haven't said it's over. They haven't said the story has ended. Nothing. It just says hiatus. Now, I have been making videos a ton about how I want them to be upfront with us. Like, if it's over, tell us it's over. And if it's not over, can you give us a date or something? Nothing. At least not yet. It's possible. It is possible that at this panel, they're going to announce more Dragon Ball Super with Toyotaro and Torishima. That is certainly possible. Maybe even with a date about when the manga returns. That's all possible. But I still don't want you to get your hopes up, because we've been here before in the past where things seem to be going a certain way. The planets seem to be aligning a certain type of way. People are starting to get hype, built up. Oh my goodness, is it happening? And then the announcement doesn't come. Or the announcement happens later. Or the whatever they were going to announce gets canceled. There's been a ton of times where that's happened in the past 10 years. So with this one, keep your expectations low. I will be covering on July 6th the panel. I won't be there at Japan Expo. Hopefully somebody will give us like a transcription of it, or at least give us the bullet points of what gets announced, if anything does get announced, because it could just be talk of Toriyama. However, be aware that Toyotaro rarely does these panels. Rarely. Not saying ever, but rarely. So maybe it is something big. I just don't want people to get their hopes up, and then when it doesn't happen, they get disappointed. That's all I'm trying to tell you. Anyways, man. So yeah, Toyotaro set to speak at Japan Expo July 6th with Torishima about Dragon Ball Super. So it is going to be a Dragon Ball Super manga panel. Could this be it? We'll find out in just a few weeks.
I hope so. It'd be nice to know if they had it bi-monthly, instead of just once a month. That's what I wish, as long as it's good storytelling and stuff. But here's hoping. I love Dragon Ball, and honestly, a lot of the best Dragon Ball nowadays is from fans that put out their own Dragon Ball stuff. So, anyways, let's. I want to go over this. I think I might have to go back.
Proportionately comprised of a very high percentage of such beings. The conflicting culture. Whoa. So togetherness defeats, this warmongering mentality. The recently despoiled German totalitarian state on Earth was similar to the old empire, but not nearly as brutal. Whoa, really? And about 10,000 times less power. defensive force to maintain it. As a result, the domain has already conquered the governing planet of the old empire. Civilization of the domain, although considerably younger and smaller in size, is already more powerful, better organized, and united by egalitarian esprit de corps, spirit of body, never known in the history of the old empire. So togetherness defeats, this warmongering mentality. The recently despoiled German totalitarian state on Earth was similar to the old empire, but not nearly as brutal. Whoa, really? And about 10,000 times less powerful. Many of the ISBs on Earth are here because they are violently opposed to totalitarian government, or because they were so psychotically vicious that they could not be controlled by old empire government. Whoa. So that would make for a planet filled with turmoil and conflict, right? If you send people here who are literally against totalitarian rule, but also people who are psychotic and power hungry, right? That would create constant conflict, which would essentially perpetuate and propel this idea of a prison planet. We'd just be fighting each other blind to the fact that there's a greater fight to be fought. It's a good plan.
For this.
It's a good plan.
Again, for legal reasons, I'm doing this. Obviously, it's transformative. And I'm putting my own experiences of the paranormal into this. I should have said that from the get-go. And stuff, so I'm adding to this. Not making this my own. This is from Area 52. Shout out to them.
Consequently, the population of Earth is disproportionately comprised of a very high percentage of such beings. The conflicting cultural and ethical moral codes of the ISBs on Earth is unusual in the extreme. The domain conquest of the central old empire planets was fought with electronic cannon. The citizens of the old planets forming the core of government for the old empire are filthy, degraded, slave society of mindless tax-paying workers who practice cannibalism, violent automotive racetracks, and bloody Roman circus-type entertainments are their only amusements.
Is that the way it is today?
Regardless of any reasonable justification we may have had for using atomic weapons to vanquish the planets of the old empire, the domain is careful not to ruin the resources of those planets by using weapons of crude radioactive force.
Sounds familiar.
The current U.S. civilization is beginning to mimic some of the trappings of that civilization, especially in the design of airplanes, automobiles, ships, trains, and telephones. Likewise, buildings in the cities of Earth are thought to be modern or futuristic if their design resembles the architecture of the old empire. The government of the old empire, before being supplanted by the domain, was comprised of beings who possessed a very craven intelligence, very much like the Axis powers during your recent World War. Those beings manifested precisely the same behavior as the galactic government that exiled them to eternal imprisonment on Earth. They were a gruesome reminder of the ageless maxim that an ISB will often manifest the treatment they have received from others. Kindness fosters kindness. Cruelty begets cruelty. One must be able and willing to use force, tempered with intelligence, to prevent harm to the innocent. However, extraordinary understanding, self-discipline, and courage are required to effectively prevent brutality without being overwhelmed by the malice that motivated the brutality. Only a demonic self-serving government would employ a logic or science to conceive that an ultimate solution to any problem is to murder and permanently erase the memory of every artist, genius, skilled manager, and inventor, and cast them into a planetary prison together with political opponents, killers, thieves, perverts, and disabled beings of an entire galaxy. We out here. They were a gruesome reminder of the ageless maxim that an ISB will often manifest the treatment they have received from others. Was comprised of beings who possessed a very craven intelligence, very much like the Axis powers during your recent World War. Those beings manifested precisely the same behavior as the galactic government that exiled them to eternal imprisonment on Earth. They were a gruesome reminder of the ageless maxim that an Isby will often manifest the treatment they have received from others. Kindness fosters kindness. Cruelty begets cruelty. One must be able and willing to use force, tempered with intelligence, to prevent harm to the innocent. However, extraordinary understanding, self-discipline, and courage are required to effectively prevent brutality without being overwhelmed by the malice that motivated the brutality. Only a demonic self-serving government would employ a logic or science to conceive that an ultimate solution to any problem is to murder and permanently erase the memory of every artist, genius, skilled manager, and inventor, and cast them into a planetary prison together with political opponents, killers, thieves, perverts, and disabled beings of an entire galaxy. We out here, folks. I mean, we out here, dude. It ain't easy, being a Sun-type 12 Class 7 civilization, Once the Isbys, expelled from the old empire, arrived on Earth, they were given amnesia and hypnotically tricked into thinking that something else had happened to them. The next step was to implant the Isbys into biological bodies on Earth. The bodies became the human populations of false civilizations, which were designed and installed in the minds of Isbys to look completely unlike the old empire. All of the Isbys of India, Egypt, being a Sun-type 12 Class 7 civilization, Once the Isbys, expelled from the old empire, arrived on Earth, they were given amnesia and hypnotically tricked into thinking that something else had happened to them. The next step was to implant the Isbys into biological bodies on Earth. The bodies became the human populations of false civilizations, which were designed and installed in the minds of Isbys to look completely unlike the old empire. Wow. All of the Isbys of India, Egypt, Babylon, Greece, Rome, and medieval Europe were guided to pattern and build the cultural elements of these societies based on standard patterns developed by the Isbys of many earlier similar civilizations on Sun-type 12 Class 7 planets that have existed for trillions of years throughout the universe. In the earliest times, Isbys sent to prison Earth lived in India. They gradually spread into Mesopotamia, Egypt, Mesoamerica, Archaea, Greece, Rome, medieval Europe, and to the New World. They were hypnotically commanded to follow the pattern of a given civilization by the old empire prison operators. This is an effective mechanism to disguise the actual time and location from the Isbys imprisoned on Earth. The language, costumes, and culture of each false civilization are intended to reinforce amnesia, because they do not remind the Isbys on Earth of the original old empire planets from which they were deported. On the very far back track of time, these types of civilizations tended to repeat themselves over and over, because the Isbys who created them become familiar with certain patterns and styles and stayed with them. It is a lot of work to invent an entire civilization, complete with culture, architecture, language, customs, mathematics, moral values, and so forth. It is much easier to replicate a copy based on a familiar and successful pattern.
Right.
A Sun-type 12 Class 7 planet is the designation given to a planet inhabited by carbon-oxygen-based life forms. The class of the planet is based on the size and radiation intensity of the star, the distance of the planetary orbit from the star, and the size, density, gravity, or chemical composition of the planet. Likewise, flora and fauna are designated and identified according to the star type and class of planet they inhabit. Got that? So what are the other ones? Do we get to find out what our brother and sister planets are? On the average, the percentage of planets in the physical universe with a breathable atmosphere is relatively small. Most planets do not have an atmosphere upon which life forms feed, as on Earth, where the chemical compositions of the atmosphere provides nutrition to plants and other organisms, which in turn support other life forms. Right. When the domain force brought the Vedic hymns to the Himalaya regions about 8,200 years ago, some human societies already existed. The Aryan people invaded and conquered India, bringing the Vedic hymns to the area. I'm a little ignorant to this. I don't know everything, folks. That's part of this journey, is that we get to figure it out. I'm sure there's somebody out there that are also a little lost here. What are the Vedic hymns?
The Vedic hymns are a collection of ancient religious texts that form the core of the Vedas, the oldest scriptures of Hinduism. Composed in Sanskrit between approximately 1500 and 500 BCE, these hymns are primarily found in the Rig Veda, the oldest of the 4 Vedas. They consist of praises, prayers, and mantras dedicated to various deities like Agni, the fire god, Indra, the king of gods, and Soma, a ritual drink. These hymns are recited during rituals and ceremonies and are considered to have spiritual and philosophical significance. They also cover a wide range of topics, including cosmology, ethics, and the nature of it.
So the domain force brought the Vedic hymns. I mean, that would make sense, right? If there is some like deeper knowledge out there that exists, that would have been brought to us by a more intelligent species.
Right.
So the Vedas were learned by them, memorized and carried forward verbally for 7,000 years before being committed to written form. During that span of time, one of the officers of the Domain Expeditionary Force was incarnated on Earth as Vishnu. He is described many times in the Rig Veda. He is still considered to be a god by the Hindus. Vishnu fought in the religious wars against the old empire forces. He is a very able and aggressive Isbi, as well as a highly effective officer, who has since been reassigned to other duties in the domain. How cool!
Wow.
That's such a cool lore. This is so cool. If this is reality is like the best science fiction novel of all, right? If this was true, that would be just the best. And you're thinking, which is it, Chris? Do you like this? Do you not like this? I don't know. I like the idea of this like soul battle going on. Like the science fiction nerd in me is like thriving right now. But you know, the human, which is on the outside of this Isby, is kind of scared.
Yeah.
But you know, either way, I think incredibly entertaining, to say the least. This entire episode was orchestrated as an attack and revolt against the Egyptian pantheon installed by old empire administrators.
Wow.
The conflict was intended to help free humankind from implanted elements of the false civilization that focused attention on many gods as superstitious ritual worships demanded by the priests who managed them. It is all part of the mental manipulation by the old empire to hide their criminal actions against the Isbis on Earth. Whoa, okay, so the ancient Egyptians were the empire. And then the ancient Hindu was, you know, the domain Isbis. A priesthood or prison guards were used to help reinforce the idea that an individual is only a biological body and is not an immortal spiritual being. The individual has no identity. The individuals have no past lives. The individual has no power. Only the gods have power. And the gods are a contrivance of the priests who intercede between men and the gods they serve. Men are slaves to the dictates of the priests who threaten eternal spiritual punishment if men do not obey them. What else would one expect on a prison planet where all prisoners have amnesia and the priests themselves are prisoners? The intervention of the domain force on Earth has not been entirely successful due to the secret mind control operation of the old empire that still continues to operate. A battle was waged between old empire forces and the domain through religious conquest between 1500 BC and about 1200 BC. The domain forces attempted to teach the concept of an individual immortal spiritual being to several influential beings on Earth. One such instance resulted in a very tragic misunderstanding, misinterpretation, and misapplication of the concept. The idea was perverted and applied to mean that there is only one Isbi, instead of the truth that everyone is an Isbi. Obviously, this was a gross incomprehension and utter unwillingness to take responsibility for one's own power. Was he talking about Jesus? What's going on here? The old empire priests managed to corrupt the concept of individual immortality into the idea that there is only one all-powerful Isbi, and that no one else is or is allowed to be an Isbi. Obviously, this is the work of the old empire amnesia operation. It is easy to teach this altered notion to beings who do not want to be responsible for their own lives. Slaves are such beings. As long as one chooses to assign responsibility for creation, existence, and personal accountability for one's own thoughts and actions to others, one is a slave. As a result, the concept of a single monotheistic God resulted and was promoted by many self-proclaimed prophets, such as the Jewish slave leader Moses, who grew up in the household of the pharaoh Amenhotep III and his son Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti, as well as his son Tutankhamun. The attempt to teach certain beings on Earth the truth that they are themselves Isbis was part of a plan to overthrow the fictional, metaphorical, anthropomorphic panoply of gods created by the Old Empire mystery cult called the Brothers of the Serpent, known in Egypt as the priests of Amun. They are a very ancient secret society within the Old Empire. Hold on, the Brothers of the Serpents. Is the Old Empire reptilian?
That sounds like it.
But didn't the reptilians say that these other guys were evil? Got some alien propaganda going on here.
Right.
The pharaoh Akhenaten was not a very intelligent being and was heavily influenced by his personal ambition for self-glorification. He altered the concept of the individual spiritual being and embodied the concept in the sun god, Aten. His pitiful existence was soon ended. He was assassinated by Maya and Perenifer, two of the priests of Amun, or Amen, which the Christians still say, who represented the interests of the Old Empire forces. The idea of one God was perpetuated by the Hebrew leader Moses while he was in Egypt. He left Egypt with his adopted people, the Jewish slaves. While they were crossing the desert, Moses was intercepted by an operative of the Old Empire near Mount Sinai. Moses was tricked into believing that this operative was the one God through the use of hypnotic commands, as well as technical and aesthetic tricks which are commonly used by the Old Empire to trap Isbis. Thereafter, the Jewish slaves, who trusted the word of Moses implicitly, have worshipped a single God they call Yahweh. The name Yahweh means anonymous, as the Isbi who worked with Moses could not use an actual name or anything that would identify himself or blow the cover of the amnesia/prison operation. The last thing the covert amnesia hypnosis prison system wanted to do is to reveal themselves openly to the Isbis on Earth. They feel that this would restore the inmates' memories. This is kind of crazy. This is kind of nuts right now. We're in pretty nutty territory. All right, now I'm not saying you lost me, but these are really interesting details that I think
A lot of it makes sense too,
I guess are important for the story. I don't know. This is the reason that all traces of physical encounters between operatives of space civilizations and humans is very carefully hidden, disguised, covered up, and denied or misdirected. This Old Empire operative contacted Moses on a desert mountaintop and delivered the 10 hypnotic commands to him. These commands are very forcefully worded and compel an Isbi into utter subservience to the will of the operator. These hypnotic commands are still in the effect and influence the thought patterns of millions of Isbis thousands of years later. Incidentally, we later discovered that the so-called Yahweh also wrote, programmed, and encoded the text of the Torah, which when it is read literally or in its decoded form, will provide a great deal more false information to those who read it.
Wow.
Ultimately, the Vedic hymns became the source of nearly all of the Eastern religions and were the philosophical source of the ideas common to Buddha,
Jews really
Zoroaster, and other philosophers. The civilizing influences of these philosophies eventually replaced the brutal idolatry of the Old Empire religions and were the true genesis of kindness and compassion. You asked me earlier why the Domain and other space civilizations do not land on Earth or make their presence known. Land on Earth? Do you think we are crazy? Or want to be crazy? It takes a very brave Isbi to come down through the atmosphere and land on Earth, because this is a prison planet with a very uncontrolled psychotic population. And no Isbi is entirely proof against the risk of entrapment, as with the members of the Domain Expeditionary Force who were captured in the Himalayas 8,200 years ago.
Wow.
I like how all of a sudden Errol's like, You think I'm nuts, bro? Coming to Earth?
Let's come with these psychos here.
Coming to this crazy place?
Yeah, I can see
Yeah.
that.
Errol can't hang with us, man. We're too uncontrollable and psychotic.
Yeah.
No one knows what Isbys on Earth are going to do. We are not scheduled to invest the resources of the domain to take total control of all the space surrounding the area at this time. This will occur in the not-too-distant future, about 5,000 Earth years, according to the time schedule of the domain. At this time, we do not prevent transports from other planetary systems or galaxies from continuing to drop Isbys into the Amnesia Force screen area. Eventually, this will change. I love how this just became like a clerical, bureaucracy-related problem for us. We're like, please free our souls from this eternal prison planet. And they're like, yeah, we'll get to it. Yeah, we got you scheduled down for 5,000 years, so not too long considering, the 80 trillion years of existence. Should only be another 5,000 years, so hang in there, and we'll get back to you as soon as we loop back around, all right? I'm gonna circle back around to this problem in 5,000 years. Warm regards, the Domain. In addition, Earth inherently is a highly unstable planet. It is not suitable for settlement or permanent habitation for any sustainable civilization. This is part of the reason why it is being used as a prison planet. No one else would seriously consider living here for a variety of simple and compelling reasons. Well, let's hear them out.
Yeah.
Because I tend to disagree. I think the fjords are beautiful. Just some amazing places on this Earth that would compel lots of people to want to colonize us. Number 1. The continental land masses of Earth are floating on a sea of molten lava beneath the surface, which causes the land masses to crack, crumble, and drift continually. Okay, not a bad note. All right, I'll give you 1 point. Number 2. Because of the liquid nature of the core, the planet is largely volcanic and subject to earthquakes and volcanic explosions. All right. Okay. Number 3. The magnetic poles of the planet shift radically, about once every 20,000 years. This causes a greater or lesser degree of devastation as a result of the tidal waves and climatic changes. Okay.
Yep. Pass.
All right. 3 for 3. Number 4. Earth is very distant from the center of the galaxy and from any other significant galactic civilization. This isolation makes it unsuitable for use, except as a pit stop or jumping off point along the way between galaxies.
That is true.
The moon and asteroids are far more suitable for this purpose because they do not have any significant gravity. Okay. Well, yeah. I don't know about that, so, I can't agree with it. Number 5. Earth is a heavy gravity planet with heavy metallic soil and a dense atmosphere. This makes it treacherous for navigational purposes. That fact that I am in this room as the result of an in-flight accident, in spite of the technology of my craft and my extensive expertise as a pilot, are proof of these facts. That's hilarious. That is pretty funny.
It is,
that this, salty little being is like, your planet sucks.
This sucks.
And the only reason I'm here is because it is unnavigable. It is dense.
Yeah.
It is gravitationally anomalous, and we don't like it. We don't like coming here. We don't want to be here. This is a disgusting prison planet. I don't know. Our pilots seem to do just fine. Maybe you could take a note, Errol, on how to properly fly one of these things. Number 6. There are approximately 60 billion Earth-like Sun-type 12 Class 7 planets in the Milky Way galaxy alone. Not to mention the vast expanse of the domain and the territories we will claim in the future. It is difficult to stretch our resources to do so much more than a periodic reconnaissance of Earth, especially when there are no immediate advantages to invest resources here. Makes sense. I see you there. Not worth stopping by. Got it. On Earth, most beings are not aware that they are Isbys, or that there are spirits of any kind. Many other beings are aware of this, but nearly everyone has a very limited understanding of themselves as an Isby. One of the reasons for this is that Isbys have been waging war against each other since the beginning of time. The purpose of these wars have always been to establish domination by one Isby or group of Isbys over another. Since an Isby cannot be killed, the objective has been to capture and immobilize Isbys. This has been done in a nearly unlimited variety of ways. The most basic method to capture and immobilize an Isby is through the use of various kinds of traps. Isby traps have been made and put into place by many invading societies, such as the one that established the old empire, beginning about 64 trillion years ago. Traps are often set up in the territory of the Isbys being attacked. Usually a trap is set within the electronic wave of beauty to attract the interest and attention of the Isby. And when the Isby moves towards the source of the aesthetic wave, such a beautiful building or beautiful music, the trap is activated by the energy put out by the Isby. One of the most common trap mechanisms uses the Isby's own thought energy output when the Isby tries to attack or fight back against the trap. The trap is activated and energized by the Isby's own thought energy. The harder the Isby fights against the trap, the more it pulls the IBS toward it and keeps them stuck in the trap. Or the Isby, you probably meant to spell Isby there. Throughout the entire history of this physical universe, vast areas of space have been taken over and colonized by Isby societies who invade and take over new areas of space in this fashion. In the past, these invasions have always shared common elements. All right, let's see what they are. Number 1, the overwhelming use of force of arms, usually with nuclear or electronic weapons. Number 2, mind control of the Isbys in the invaded area through the use of electroshock, drugs, hypnosis, erasure of memory, and implantation of false memory or false information intended to subjugate and enslave the local Isby population. Check. Number 3, takeover of natural resources by the invading Isbys. Check. Number 4, political, economic, and social slavery of the local population. These activities continue in present time. All of the Isbys on Earth have been members of one or more of these activities in the past, both as an invader or as part of the population being invaded. There are no saints in this universe. Very few have avoided or been exempted from warfare between Isbys. Isbys on Earth are still the victims of this activity at this very moment. The between lives amnesia administered to Isbys is one of the mechanisms of an elaborate system of old empire Isby trap. Well, that's interesting because, again, I reference Dr. Michael Newton and his books Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls and so forth, where the focus of the books is life between life. It is about our souls and where they go between lives. Now, this is proposing that that whole life between life thing might just be controlled suggestion. If you created a being and wanted to control it, you would have to have some type of firewall or some type of, I don't know, some type of screen in place where if the physical body underwent hypnotic regression, it would automatically tap into the information that was placed there for it to be uncovered. Right? So that all of these past life regression or between life regressions are actually just implanted false memories that are at the base of our consciousness in case, we breach this conscious barrier. Like we do during hypnotic regression. I don't know. Just an interesting thought. Interesting and terrifying. This operation is managed by an illicit renegade secret police force of the old empire, using false provocation operations to disguise their activity in order to prevent detection by their own government, the domain, and by the victims of their activities. They are mind control methods developed by government psychiatrists. Earth is a ghetto planet. It is the result of an intergalactic holocaust. Isbys have been sentenced to Earth either because, 1, they are too viciously insane or perverse to function as a part of any civilization, no matter how degraded or corrupt. 2, or they are a revolutionary threat to the social, economic, and political caste system that has been so carefully built and brutally enforced in the old empire. Biological bodies are specifically designed and designated as the lowest order of entity in the Old Empire caste system. When an ISB is sent to Earth and then tricked or coerced into operating in a biological body, they're actually in a prison inside a prison. Okay, it gets worse. Cool. I will say, it is kind of funny operating in a biological body with a social, economic, and political caste system that is the result of an intergalactic holocaust. ISBs have been sentenced to Earth either because, 1, they are too viciously insane or perverse to function as a part of any civilization, no matter how degraded or corrupt. 2, or they are a revolutionary threat to the social, economic, and political caste system that has been so carefully built and brutally enforced in the Old Empire. Biological bodies are specifically designed and designated as the lowest order of entity in the Old Empire caste system. When an ISB is sent to Earth and then tricked or coerced into operating in a biological body, they're actually in a prison inside a prison. Okay, it gets worse. Cool.
Actually, we are in a prison.
I will say, it is kind of funny that they're like, you're either a deviant pervert or, you know, a freedom fighter. I bet like most people watching out there are like,
right.
well, I think I know which one I am. I mean, it's kind of insane that like they just, you know, put two categories out there.
Right.
Number 3, in an effort to permanently and irreversibly rid the Old Empire of such untouchables, the eternal identity, memory, and abilities of every ISB is forcefully erased. This final solution was conceived and carried out by the psychopathic criminals who are controlled by the Old Empire. I mean, that's a bit of a, you know,
that's
final solution in quotes, obviously referring to Hitler. And yep, here we go. The mass extermination of untouchables in prison camps created by Germany during World War II were recently revealed. Likewise, the ISBs of Earth are the victims of spiritual eradication and eternal slavery inside frail biological bodies, inspired by the same kind of craven hatred in the Old Empire.
Wow.
So we're just basically incarnations of the worst the universe has to offer, or some of the best.
Yeah.
The kind and creative inmates of Earth are continuously tortured by butchers and lunatics who are controlled by the Old Empire prison operators. The so-called
like
civilizations of Earth, from the age of useless pyramids to the age of nuclear holocaust, have been a colossal waste of natural resources, a perverted use of intelligence, and an overt oppression of the spiritual essence of every single ISB on the planet. If the domain sent ships to every corner of the universe in search of hell, their quest could end on Earth. What greater brutality can be inflicted on anyone than to erase their spiritual awareness, identity, ability, and memory that is the essence of oneself?
We are hell.
Oof. Wow. Yeah, that would be a big tragedy, wouldn't it?
I mean, honestly, Americans and Europeans, I mean, a lot of society, unless you're in a place like Africa or some place in South America, or they're just places on Earth. I mean, people don't get how violent, you know, this world is. Like in Africa and stuff like that, animals have to kill just to eat, and such as here or any other place. And we don't see how truly violent this world is, and everything, and how people kill each other a lot more. People think it's crazy here. It's a lot crazier over there in these third world countries. And, you know, people would honestly say that this planet is hell. I feel that way in a lot of ways, that this planet is. It's very violent. I've seen a lot of stuff that a lot of people in America don't, unless they come from a third world country themselves. Yeah, I get where, you know, a person that this story comes from, where this could be a hell's planet, and it could be a very violent planet. and stuff. So
The majority of the lost members of the Domain force have followed the general progression of Western civilization from India into the Middle East, then to Chaldee and Babylon, into Egypt, through Archaea, Greece, Rome, into Europe, to the Western Hemisphere, and then all around the world. The members of the Lost Battalion, and so many other Isbys on Earth, could be valuable citizens of the Domain, not including those who are vicious criminals or perverts. Unfortunately, there has been no workable method conceived to emancipate the Isbys from Earth. Therefore, as a matter of common logic, as well as the official policy of the Domain, it is safer and more sensible to avoid contact with the Isby population of Earth until such time as the proper resources can be allocated to locate and destroy the old Empire force screen and amnesia machinery and develop a therapy to restore the memory of an Isby. So once again, we're kind of here waiting for our ride, but ain't quite ready. You know, one thing I will say though, if this is the worst, how can we still feel love? How can we still feel joy? Right? Maybe the amount of joy we feel just pales in comparison to what's actually out there. Who knows? But I'm quite happy with this place. And if I can be happy in hell, well, I can be happy anywhere. So I'll leave it at that. Let me know your thoughts below. There's a lot to digest there. Some of this, you know, does feel somewhat like it could have legs. You know, again,
from my own near-death experiences and me being able to go inside, outside the body and see that what we live is a simulation. We live in a simulation. This isn't real compared to the other side, and how all these religions are fake, but there's some reality, some realism, I should say, some realism to them as well. And how we are judged in the afterlife is nothing like how these stupid religions put it, usually, you know. I'd say the main three, you know, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Catholicism, that's not how we are judged in the afterlife. None of that is real. And how people are judged here, I hate how people are judged here, how people judge each other. It's something I really hate because being on the other side, having these near-death experiences and stuff like that, you see it's just a big joke in a lot of ways. How people judge each other, how people invoke religion for violence and to judge others and to really create war and all this other BS. I have nothing but disrespect for that, and how on the other side, you know, there's this love and everything, and all is forgiven, all can be forgiven and stuff like that, no matter what kind of bad stuff you did. Anybody can be forgiven on the other side. And how people judge each other here is of the flesh, how we react to each other is the flesh, and how we are really like energy and stuff like that, are made up of energy, electromagnetic energy, and everything. How we have, you know, psychic, telepathic abilities. We all have these things, and, you know, there are ETs out there and stuff like that. Different dimensions, stuff like that. It isn't just heaven or hell. You know, there are different realities and stuff like that. It's not how it is in the Bible. These religions were created from other religions. You know, tribes, tribalism, tribes that hate each other and wanted to control and subjugate their people. And it just hate begets hate. and how they created stuff to just, you know, really control the people, find reasons to control them, or their woman, or whatever. Um, it's something how being on the other side. All you have to do is think of a place. You can be there. You can just go past the speed of light. You can just move at the speed of thought and everything. And I miss being on the other side. I miss, you know, as a lot of other people would say that have had near-death experiences, they miss being dead. Because this realm is not real. It isn't. It's just fiction in a lot of ways. So I mean, I do understand some of this, and I totally get it. How some of this does make sense, and other parts don't. But I invite people to actually go through this because some of it does make sense. If anybody's had near-death experiences and knows, you know, about the simulation that we could be in. I know that we're living in a simulation. I know it. And stuff. And our job as humans is to evolve past the flesh, past, you know, these bodies, past this simulation, and to learn about the other ones and realities and dimensions and stuff like that, to conquer, um, become something more of than we are, because we are. We're not just humans. We're much more than that. So anyways, I end it here. Um, anyway, watch this whole, leave a like, leave a comment. Tell you what you think. I do lots of different paranormal stuff. I even did this on my OnlyFans as well, with some celebrities I know as well. So, anyways, take care. Everyone have a great morning. You're not where you are.